Welcome to Noisecutter.
Welcome to this edition of the Noisecutter podcast with me, Rex Chatterjee. I'm joined today by Ellen Ioanes of Vox, and Ellen's written what I think is probably the best treatment of the current crisis in Haiti that I've read, in the last couple of weeks, just kind of following the situation of what's going on. And so Ellen's so graciously joined us today to discuss her work and the potential for the future. Ellen, how's it going?
I'm all right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your nice words and happy to be on. And I'm happy and just really grateful that people are actually talking about Haiti and now it seems like having a willingness to understand what the underlying political and social problems to the current violent security crisis are, because if we look at gangs as just sort of divorced from politics in Haiti especially, and from a lot of other different kind of factors, it's really easy to just kind of dismiss it. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation.
Yeah, no, it's a story that, from my side, and again, I've written on this a bit, but I haven't taken nearly the dive into it that you have. But it's a story that needs to be amplified because precisely it is a country that, to the minds of, I think, so many Americans, is just kind of overlooked as like, oh, it's a place in the Caribbean that we can't go vacation. Great. Next, right?
Yeah, it's sort of viewed, I think, as this intractable problem, whether it's due to political instability or a dictatorship under the Duvaliers back in the 50s, 60s, well, the 60s through the 80s, and then you have disease, you have natural disasters, and now you have these armed groups, this gang violence, and it's kind of easy to act like it has nothing to do with us in the United States. And as I think we'll talk about later, that's actually really untrue. So it's really important for Americans, I think, to be able to understand the role that the global community plays in Haiti's problems. And they are really significant problems, and how we can be better positioned to understand what a better future for Haitians could look like.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Duvalier, and I think that is a good place to kind of start, right, historically. So,
Yeah, and especially when we're talking about armed groups as sort of really intimately connected with Haitian politics, that's really sort of the beginning. I mean, really, if we wanted to, we could start at the Haitian Revolution. But
yeah.
let's talk about gangs. Let's talk about armed groups first. And really, that tradition of using violence to and using systematic violence to attain political goals really started under Papa Doc Duvalier in the 1960s. And he was really a character, but he was also ruthless. He was violent. He really had he was this really interesting mix of, he was a nationalist, and he was really interested in Black Haitian culture and Black power. And that came out in some really peculiar ways, like this really intense obsession with voodoo and really pushing that on Haitian people and making that into policy in very strange ways. But it also, he was a violent dictator, and that came out through the Tonton Macoute, that was his armed group that, used violence to attack his enemies, his political dissidents, to really make sure that he maintained power. And
so that's the crazy thing, right? Is that Tonton Macoute were not the Haitian army, right? They're a separate, like, paramilitary organization.
Exactly. And like, I think when we're talking about gang violence in Haiti, there's, it's really best to look at them as sort of armed groups or paramilitary organizations. Um, they don't necessarily exactly have ideologies per se, which is like that's a little bit different from how we look at a paramilitary organization
Mm-hmm.
or an armed group. But I think in terms of their capabilities and the level of power that they have, and their politicization, like that's appropriate, or it's
Mm-hmm.
appropriate to like kind of add that into the mix. But commonly in American media in particular, you'll see them referred to as gangs, and that's not inappropriate, but just want to
Mm-hmm.
like complicate our idea of like what these groups actually are and have historically been too.
Mm-hmm. So Papa Doc Duvalier, and then he's succeeded by his
His
son. Is that right?
son, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we see a lot more of the same under Jean-Claude. Sorry, my French is not good.
Better than
And
mine.
so yeah, so we see a lot more. We see more of the same, and truly, like that just essentially becomes entrenched in Haitian politics. So
Mm-hmm.
you also see them to varying degrees under Aristide. You certainly see sort of an intimacy between the gangs and like Jovenel Moise was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to have been quite close to Barbeque, the Jimmy Cherizier,
Yep.
also known as Barbecue,
Mm-hmm.
who is the most well-known gang leader in
Yeah.
Haiti now. So these armed groups do have ties to different political groups over the years, certainly.
Right. Right. And so that's kind of, for me at least, something that sort of stands out. And like, how to kind of make this analogy for like our generally sort of American or, Western minded um audience, right? Is like we remember when, the storming of the Capitol, right? And if you can imagine a political candidate with a organized, and not to say that the January 6th rioters were as organized, but an organized band of people willing to do violence in order to perpetuate someone's political ideals, that is a powerful tool that is thankfully, not really tolerated in our country, but in Haiti is sort of like the de facto how things run. Each candidate has their own sort of group of hooligans, but well organized and well armed hooligans.
Yeah, I mean to a greater or lesser extent, and like don't forget that it's not just politics; it's business interests as
Mm-hmm.
well. That's a really important part of it too. And you, the gangs and the armed groups certainly contribute to the corruption of Haitian politics and Haitian politicians, but like this is also a system that is not necessarily responsive to Haitian people either. And there are lots of threads of corruption within politics too that don't have anything necessarily to, or that have less to do with armed groups too, that are their own sort of separate things.
Right. And so, like, how, and this is maybe like a bigger question, right? But how does a country end up in a place where security or the providence of security is so sort of fragmented, right? Like in America, despite our problems with like the police in general, 911 still kind of works, but that's never really been a thing in Haiti, right?
I mean, there is a national police force and there is training and there is some functionality there. Historically there has been, but
Mm-hmm.
these people, there's also like a lot of corruption in the police force too. Like
Mm-hmm.
Barbecue was a police officer.
Right.
um
Right.
and especially when you live in a place where there is not really, where the indigenous economy has been battered by years of outside interests, as well as an aid state, let's say. uh, People don't really have a lot of options to make money
Mm-hmm.
besides maybe working with these aid groups, maybe working with the government, maybe working with the gangs. So
Right.
you have all these different factors that go into it. Um, so being in the police force, maybe you could make a decent living, but also like now under Ariel Henry, these people haven't been paid in months, and there's still like the endemic corruption too. So it's really, really hard to ask people to put their lives on the line to
Right.
fight these gangs and to protect people if they're not getting paid, if they're not able to feed their families. Like,
Yeah.
who wants to do that?
Right.
It's really hard.
Right.
And so, and then there's also the hollowing out of like the judicial institutions. So like
Hmm.
there just is like these groups are able to act basically with impunity because who's going to put them on trial?
Right.
Ariel Henry has really hollowed out all these government institutions that would, provide some form of transparency and some form of, just at least accountability. So that's a big part too. I mean, and then there's the other factor of like huge amounts of arms coming from specifically the United States into Haiti, and nothing's really being done about that. So you have all these different factors that allows, you have this vacuum essentially under Henri. You have not a lot of options, not a lot of accountability, and not a lot of capacity to fight the gangs. And so that's just a really, it's a potent mix.
That's one thing that's actually kind of shocked me, right? Is you know, watching, or looking at images in the news of Barbecue specifically, and other gang members. These guys are armed with,
Armed to
it's
the
hard to tell,
teeth.
not state of the art, but like pretty much closer to state of the art American rifles and carbines than, you've seen other sort of rebel factions. This isn't like Boko Haram running around with like, AK-47s from 1947. This is not literally, but almost, right? But like this is like brand new, spanking
Yeah.
new American armament that random
Yeah.
gangs just have access to. How does that happen?
I mean, there's not been a major push on the American side to stop the outflow.
Hmm.
There's been, crackdowns on some of the like smaller scale traffickers and the like, but nobody's going after the big fish, and that's
Hmm.
the problem. And then you have people like you have gangs in control of like the ports, or at least nominally in or able to facilitate control of the port. So then
Hmm.
you have, an actor who has a stake in getting these weapons and
Yeah.
overseeing, the inflow too. So there's
Yeah.
no better predictor, I think, of future violence besides like having a huge cache of arms. Like you can't
Yeah.
get to the scale of violence that we're talking about if you don't have arms. And that can be either like from an inflow from the United States, like we're talking about right now, but like leftover arms from previous civil conflict. Like you have to, I mean, like that's a lot of what we saw in El Salvador. So you have to conscientiously, when you deconflict, you have to be able to get these arms like out of circulation.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
important. And then, but then this, you can't, I was talking to somebody who's like, you can't do this without bullets. And it's really, it's not as simple as that, but like that would go a long way toward, shutting down a lot of this violence.
Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to I mean, it's not funny. It's actually horrible, but it's funny, peculiar. I was listening to a podcast about the situation in Gaza. And someone with knowledge of the situation is saying, like, look, Hamas right now isn't hard up for bullets. They're hard up for food and water, but they've got plenty of bullets. And it's like, it's, all of, yeah, I mean, right, but then, I mean, not to get into a discussion about arms
Yeah.
control, but like, it's not just nukes people should be worried about, right? It's even down to ammo.
I mean,
um
we could absolutely get into a whole conversation about arms treaties, which is really one of my little like niche interests.
no, get into it then.
Well, side,
Hmm.
with the Biden administration saying we've got to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, like 30,000 deaths is unacceptable. Well, who's supplying the weaponry to make that happen? And that makes aid distribution impossible. Like, where's that money and where's that ammo coming from? Like, you can't
Yeah.
play both sides that way. So, like, I think, that's a really important aspect to think about. And then when it comes to like bigger arms control treaties, like we just don't, that's just not a priority right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when we have like newer kinds of weapons, when we're talking about like hypersonics, for example, like we
Mm-hmm.
just don't have any treaties, and there's just no political will anywhere in the United States, anywhere, to really get a grip on that. So that's something that scares me a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, back
Yeah.
to so small arms, and there are a lot of great places that track this.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see, the Small Arms Project, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Small Arms Survey is really good at tracking this kind of stuff. So like we were saying, you have to be able, in order to terrorize, you have to have something to terrorize with, and
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. I mean, Henri had tried to negotiate with, Kenya and William Ruto's government to send over, I think they were talking about, I heard reports between 1,000 and 2,000 police forces. And it's
Yeah.
like, first of all, when I hear police forces, like, I don't think it's just beat cops with revolvers or like, semi-automatic handguns, because that seems ridiculous, just patently ridiculous. But even if
This is
these
like a
were like,
military police.
yeah, even if these were light infantry masquerading as police forces, I still don't think 1,000 or 2,000 of them would be enough to deal with the gangs in Haiti. Like, I think that is a much
Yeah.
bigger project.
Well, I think so. A couple of things about that. I mean,
Mm.
first, it wasn't just Kenya, like the United States and that coalition was trying
Mm-hmm.
to get more people on board, more people to volunteer. Jamaica had at one point volunteered troops, other Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
nations,
Mm-hmm.
um, training, support, financial, that kind of stuff. But uh we don't know how big right now the force would be.
Mm-hmm.
It would take thousands. It would take thousands
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
And it's also not fully funded.
Mm-hmm.
So the project right now, the multinational security, they call it, what is the state? Multinational security something, MSS is the
Yeah.
acronym that we're going to use. A multinational security support mission. So
Yeah.
that's what they call it at the State Department. So that would cost 600 million. That's the budget for it. But the budget for the Haitian National Police as it stands per year is
Mm-hmm.
about 200 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're talking like only tripling the amount that is already used by the Haitian National Police. That doesn't seem to be enough, especially when we're asking people to come and to a foreign country and to really put their lives on the line in a very dangerous
Yeah.
situation, in a risky
Yeah.
situation. And then you have training, you have all kinds of training, not just how to deal with these armed groups, but also like sanitation training to
Mm-hmm.
prevent like another cholera outbreak, sexual violence prevention training.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do all of this sort of preparation, and I just don't think $600 million is gonna cut it. And plus, we only have $300 million of that funded, and that's all from the United States. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a first problem. Second problem is the mission is only mandated for a year so far, with the possibility to re-up. And with that budget and in that time frame, it seems like, to me and to other people that I've spoken to, that just does not seem like a sufficient amount of time to sort of pull out, to diminish the capacity of the gangs to operate,
Mm-hmm.
to do anything besides honestly just kill people or maybe put them
Mm-hmm.
in prison. Because my other question is, how do people get justice and reparations? Because those are really important after effects
Mm-hmm.
of violence, and of significant and widespread violence against civilians. Like, if there's no institution for justice, if the justice system is completely hollowed out, then how do you put gang members on trial and in prison.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage them besides like extrajudicial killings?
Right. Right.
Or
You have to rebuild the whole infrastructure.
yeah, or extrajudicial detentions, which
Right.
is also less than ideal. We see that in El Salvador, and while Bukele seems to have the crime problem like under control, that can't last forever because these other institutions are being degraded at the same time. And when you don't have when you don't have the judicial institution, when you don't have the social institutions, when you don't have economic alternatives for people, like getting rid of the violence just isn't enough.
Right. Right. To create like that sea change in the fabric of their society that is kind of necessary.
Well, and it's not just like, it's not that people don't want it. Like there's really strong organizing and really, really major impressive civil society, and what people are able to do given just how challenging the operating environment is so impressive, just in terms of coming up with political ideas for what is our future going to look like in Haiti. What kind of government do we want? What kind of society do we want to live in? What are our values, and how do we make sure that we can have a Haitian-led future and entrench those values in our society? How do we create a better, more entrenched indigenous economy? Like Haiti's a beautiful, rich, like it could be an extraordinary tourist destination, but like you can grow coffee, you can grow all kinds of crops. There are smart, educated people. Like there's a lot of capacity, like human capacity there. It's just been it's for a variety of reasons, it hasn't been able to thrive.
Well, yeah. I mean, so I have a few questions from all of that. Fabulous, by the way. I mean, that this is what folks need to know, right? One, on the culture of Haiti, have you seen the episode of No Reservations, Anthony Bourdain,
yes,
on Haiti? It's episode 1 of season 7. I know that because I just watched it again.
Okay.
It's a fantastic kind of dichotomy of like the will of the people of Haiti to rise out from under a lot of like what's been keeping them down, gang violence and political weaponization of gang violence, etc. But also at the same time the richness of the culture and the history in Haiti.
It's extraordinary.
It is, and but just to see it kind of get torn down by just unabated greed and ambition by a armed few is kind of crazy. But again, it's like, I don't think this is a problem that like human history has really figured out. In some places it's kind of worked, in some places it hasn't, but I don't think that we have like a one-size-fits-all game plan for this. Otherwise we would have implemented them already, right?
And that's why the Haitian-led solutions are so critically important to take seriously. Like, rather than back Opry, the United States and other powers had options after Jovenel Moise was assassanated.
Let's go into that a bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing is the Montana Accord, which was negotiated in 2021, and it's a group of civil society stakeholders, people in the business community, people in the NGOs, and religious communities, political parties, all of those things. They put forward ideas of like what a transitional council is supposed to look like, what they would want, how are we going to make a schedule for elections. Like these ideas were already there. These ideas that this CARICOM meeting in this CARICOM and other stakeholders meeting in Jamaica that they came together to discuss earlier this week, those ideas were put forward by Haitian stakeholders years ago. And it's just now that, Antony Blinken and other like European and Canadian stakeholders are saying like, okay, I guess we need a transitional council.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who backed Henry. Like, it didn't have to be this way if you had listened to what Haitian people said. Like, okay, we're in a crisis. Here's what we think we should do. So now there's this transitional council, and Haitians did participate in these meetings, but the expectation is like, okay, we're going to have a 7-member voting member transitional council to decide who is going to appoint. We're going to appoint a president, and there are going to be 2 observatory members, and we have to like figure it out now. Well, we had years actually to come up with this with people who could really participate, and we had years to support these Haitian-led solutions, or if not solutions, at least ideas. And what we have now is sort of like a watered down version of that that's really, really rushed. And, while I think it's a step in the right direction, like I don't know that it's set up to succeed exactly.
Yeah. And so just to kind of like back it up a little bit, you mean that a transitionary council should have been and was suggested by Haitian
this
Civil
Montana
Society. Yep. Back at the time after Juvenal Moise was assassinated.
Yeah, in 2021. And so,
yep. And so the crazy thing still, right, is one, they still don't, I think, know, right, who was behind it. And wasn't it Henri considered a suspect?
Well, Henri has been sort of tied to it. I don't think he was ever considered a suspect, but what we think, what we know is like, what we know is probably a group of Colombian mercenaries actually carried this out. There have been a few arrests here in the U.S. actually of people who are suspected of plotting the assassination. I don't know to what degree Henri was involved.
He was detained in Haiti and questioned.
Yeah. Yes, he was, and then he like shut down the investigation. So that doesn't really that doesn't like give me a ton of confidence. But we still don't have a sense of who, like a solid sense of who is behind it.
Yeah,
and that's a presidential assassination. That's wild.
Yeah. And so to clarify for folks as well, I think it was Barbeque who was closely associated with Moise, right? And so this just maybe serves a bit to explain as to why he's so against Henri, aside from the terrible things that Henri's government has done as well, right? But kind of explains that a bit, or
I don't really have a good explanation, honestly, for this, because it's not like Henri hasn't allowed him to operate with impunity.
Is that a willful allowance or more of a, well, I can't really do much to stop you?
I think it's Henri only looking out for himself, only serving his own interests, and using sort of participating in a form of state capture to do that, which another one of my niche interests is like these sort of hybrid ways that democracy exists, or the way that certain actors can sort of hijack it for their own purposes. So Henri has not held elections. There have been no elections in Haiti since 2016. He has totally hollowed out the judicial institutions. There's no Senate. There's no parliament at all, because their mandate ended a year ago. So there's just like, there's nothing other than Henri, really, and his cronies. So essentially what he's done is sort of taken the Haitian state to serve his own purposes, whatever they are, whether that's to, escape any suspicion for, in the death of Jovenel Moise, or to, funnel money. I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm just saying, he's being able to hijack the state for his own purposes, whatever they are. So that is, that's Henri. But when it comes to Barbeque, what's been really interesting is the gangs have been able to gain some independence from, political parties and sponsors because they have their own business. They can run drugs, they can run weapons, they can extort, kidnap people. So they have their own source of income, and they are less dependent on political actors. And I think that maybe that contributes a bit to what you see now. Is just the sort of like gangs running things, essentially. And it's really hard to tell what Barbecue's motivations are. They're really opaque, other than just his own power and like menacing people.
I was going to say, do you think he has political aspirations of his own?
That's really hard. He hasn't said, I want to be the leader of Haiti like Guy Philippe has, who's another armed group leader. And says he intends to stand in Haitian elections in 2025. He has a criminal record in the U.S. Like, not a great guy. And he was involved in the Aristide, the revolution against Aristide. Like, he's got quite a history in Haiti. Barbecue hasn't exactly said that. He has said what he's been saying recently, because he's threatened to take over the Haitian government multiple times. This time, though, he kind of did it, in the sense that they got Henry out, this sort of like group of gangs, this Vive Ensemble, ousted Henry. But he said, like, what we want to do is create a new system, but there's no indication of what that means. Like, the Haitian political system is rotten and corrupt. Like, I'm not arguing with that, but like, this guy is not offering an alternative other than Barbecue. Like, he's there for himself. And I mean, like, he kind of presents himself as a bit of a Robin Hood figure. He's fighting against the oligarchy, the corrupt, the entrenched. He gives gifts to mothers on Mother's Day, things like that. But he also, like, murders people and sets them, like, his name is allegedly from, like, his habit of setting people on fire. This is not a nice guy. This is not, like, and he's charismatic for sure, and he's visible. He loves to talk to the foreign press. He loves to, like, be out with his whatever weapon in his bulletproof vest, chitting and chatting. But like, this guy's not
he's not a statesman.
He's not a statesman. He's not like building I guess like leading an armed group. To an extent, you have to have bureaucracy for sure. But like, that's different from a nation.
We've seen in like relatively recent history, right? Like, armed group leaders accused of being exceptionally brutal, but nevertheless being considered possible or actual statesmen as well. And what I'm thinking about here is, right, in Afghanistan, you had Ahmad Shah Massoud, you had let's see, Uzbek guy, it was General Dostum, right? And he was kind of sidelined for being exceptionally brutal. Sorry, what were you saying?
And Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, like, those guys are true nightmares, like, vile people.
Right, but nevertheless were in some ways considered to be viable statesmen as well, right? Sort of, right? Well, maybe not, but
I think part of that was because they had CIA thing.
That's kind of what I mean,
I think,
right?
Like, we were the ones saying, like, oh, those are totally viable statements. That was Charlie Wilson saying that. I'm not.
I mean, like, okay, but so in Haiti, that's not happening for Barbecue, right? Like,
I mean, not that I have seen, and like, I also am not really like. He's definitely the most visible for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know that he is the leader with the most power. Exactly, because there are other people. There's Izo. He's 26. Does these rap videos. He's
okay.
Social media guy. But he's also a gang leader, and he managed to he controls a lot of his gang controls a lot of the maritime space outside of the port of Haiti. Or the Port-au-Prince. Sorry.
Hmm.
So, that's really significant. And that's enabled him to like build up his own like drug smuggling or drug running and weapon running businesses. Like he's
Yeah.
been able he's smart. Like he's been able to make money off of that.
Yeah.
And then you also have Guy Philippe, who
Hmm.
is a really known quantity and who has said, like, I intend to stand in the next elections. So, and also, like, people are people are aware that barbecue has made their lives hell.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I don't know, maybe people see him as an option, but like that's not really been something that's clearly been stated to me.
Yeah. So leaving him aside, I mean, what are the odds that either one of the other two play any kind of role in this transitionary council, right? Because the thing that I can't really stretch my head around is that they say that gangs control 80% of Port-au-Prince and a decent proportion, right, of the rest of the country as well. So without the buy-in of the people who actually have the as of the folks sitting around, right, in the entire country. I don't care what council you're going to create. How do you explain how that's going to work
Yeah,
practically?
it's like,
Yeah.
are you going to negotiate with gangs?
Well, I think you have to, right? But how do you, and what
Yeah,
concessions are you willing to make?
I mean, yeah. So I keep coming back to El Salvador, but there is good evidence that Nayib Bukele was negotiating with the gangs, with MS-13, with Barrio 18. Um, and so it's not that it hasn't been done before, but how do you manage it? How do
Yeah.
you, can you, is it, I don't, like you, I don't see how you get outside of that.
Hmm.
I also wouldn't want to negotiate with barbecue. I wouldn't want to negotiate
Yeah.
with any of those guys.
Yeah.
And, they're in this Vivre Ensemble right now,
Hmm.
which is this coalition of the gangs, but like they're always fighting each other. That's not going to last. So, like, which gangs are you going to negotiate with? How are you
Hmm.
going to negotiate something that works for all of the different groups? Like,
Yeah.
that to me, that seems like a recipe for disaster. And that's just not something that I've heard US government officials really discuss. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, it's a little bit strange to me. It, the, the security mission and then the political part are discussed in the same sentence. Like, you'll see it in the same paragraph when it comes to the US government officials having conversations about this, but there's no sense of how they connect and like intersect.
Hmm.
And believe me, like, we try and ask questions about this, but it's, and I think like this is not something that they've thought through, honestly. Like yeah, like I don't think
Yeah.
they're answering because I don't think they have an answer. Um, they got me, Brian Nichols. If I'm wrong about that, please feel free to set me straight on the record, please. Um, but like, people that I talk to, and from my understanding is like, if you're gonna come in with these foreign forces, like,
Yeah.
you cannot simply have a military option. Like, there's no doubt that something needs to happen. Like, these gangs are terrorizing people, they are ruining lives, they're killing people, they're destroying much of Haiti's future. Like, they are an active part in that. I don't think anybody's arguing against that. However, like, how do these, if you're going to do the security mission, how does it fit in with your political and social um mission too? Because
Yeah.
like, this is the violence, and the argument that I make is like, at its heart, this is a political and a social problem.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to this level of violence if you have a government that's actually responsive to the people that it's supposed to serve.
Yeah. That's yeah. Uh, I can't agree more, right? It's I don't really have a
A pithy response.
I don't. I'm all out of those.
Oh, sorry, man. Yeah.
It was too good. It was too good. You're right. You're dead right, right? But like so the half-baked thing I keep coming back to, right? Because it's like something I keep thinking about. I wrote a little bit about this plan to it's actually kind of crazy. Literally ram a pier into the side of Gaza without putting American boots on the other side. And then we're just going to send the aid over, and then magically it's going to go to where it's supposed to go. Right. And I'm like, this seems a little half baked. And so now to hear you say this about kind of Haiti as well, I'm just like, what? What? How does this keep happening?
Uh, I mean, I think part of the problem is the United States really is not good at long-term thinking. And this is just like my opinion. Um, like the this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is like you really can't supply Israel with arms and bullets and also say like we really got to get aid to Gaza. Like those are two fundamentally oppositional viewpoints and needs and desires and policies. Like you do kind of have to choose one here. So I think another problem is like a real lack of accountability on the part of like the Western world, particularly the US and France, when it comes to Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
and there's a wonderful piece that
No, I was going to say, if you want to give people a quick schooling on what France has done to Haiti, by all means.
Oh yeah. So there's a piece that I'll send to you by Catherine Porter for the Times. It came out 2022 or 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But she's one of the great humane, empathetic, truly curious reporters, particularly about Haiti. She loves this place so much, and she loves the people so much. And you really see that in her reporting. But it goes back, this wonderful piece goes back to this debt that France insisted Haiti pay as reparations for its own revolution and freedom, and the knock-on effects that it's had for centuries in terms of really opening up Haiti to foreign interference, and also just truly on a financial level, really devastated Haiti.
Yeah.
And it's been truly unjust. And like France owes Haiti reparations. France owes Haiti money. And then you have the United States, who has interfered in Haiti multiple times. 1915, we had Marines occupying Haiti.
We're like 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been multiple times over, the United States really has loved to interfere with all of Latin America and the Caribbean. It's been our sort of like raison d'etre over the entire 20th century. And it has turned out very poorly for all of the people who live there. And Haiti is no exception. And then there's also the issue of aid, just like truly NGO financial aid, which Jake Johnston has written a book about, and specifically about Haiti. But like part of the problem is when you have aid without investment, which like aid is just like, let's give you money and like let's get our NGO people on the ground, and let's get people employed that way, rather than saying like, oh, can we invest in a sugar factory, or can we invest in something here? That creates a cycle in which, and I'm not saying like foreign direct investment is the answer, because that's also not true at all. But in an aid state, you have a situation where you really build an economy that's based on aid, and that makes, rather than like building up your own indigenous ways of your own indigenous economies, your own indigenous like social contracts and and government, like the goal is to get more aid. And so that makes leadership, that makes your government much more responsive to the outside world than like what people actually need and want, because they can like, it opens up all these avenues for corruption. And you really, then you get a situation like Haiti. And so I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, on two sides of it, right? Like, one, with respect to foreign aid, it's not without its complications and problems as well, right? We can talk about the UN and the cholera outbreak, and then there were the
Sexual
Oxfam,
violence. Yeah.
the Oxfam and sexual violence, right?
Yes, exactly.
And this
There are
is the
these,
UN and Oxfam. This is
I
not like
know.
Barbecue and EZO or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and then that means like people have reason not to trust
yeah,
these like, well,
yeah,
you know, missions that are well-meaning, but then you, like, you have an entire economy that's like based on aid, not like skills. That's not based on like what people can do or what they need or want. So
yeah. And the thing
it
I was going to
does.
say on the investment side, exactly right. It's about creating investment that is, I mean, people will say it's sustainable investment. It's really what I think of it as not exploitative investment, right?
Right.
Not
Yeah.
sweatshops. Because that's where, I mean, the U.S. did have a market for goods manufactured in Haiti. They were manufactured in Haitian sweatshops
Yeah,
for people like
exactly.
Disney. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, yes, exactly. So, like, paying attention to what Haitian people are actually capable of rather than like thinking of them as just like poor and suffering and desperate for any work, like
Yeah.
that. I mean, there's an inescapable element of racism at play
Yeah.
here.
Mhm.
But like there are Haitian doctors who are brilliant, engineers, like the business sector, despite everything, is really working hard, working
Yeah.
really hard, to try and change what Haiti looks like and sort of like try and imagine a future as a civil society. People are organizing all day, every day to make a livable future that fits Haiti, that fits this place and its people, and that they deserve to have. And like, would I love to go in 10 years on vacation to Haiti? I would love that.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
think that would be marvelous. Would I love to drink Haitian coffee? Like, yes. Would I like, you know, there's
Yeah.
so much that's possible. And that the problem is we are not listening to like, okay, well, what do Haitian people say it's possible? And you have to do that for this to be a functional, for there to be steps toward a solution. And I do think the transitional council is like the tiniest baby step, watered down baby step there, if only that it like resembles things that Haitians have proposed before and said that they wanted, and said like, look, we have a framework for this, we have a framework, let's do it. Like, Ariel Henry is unpopular, he has no real like, he didn't have a strong mandate, and he was the prime minister and I guess the acting president, but like the president is the one with the power, so he wasn't really even, he didn't even really have the title of like somebody who makes decisions for Haiti. And like, he kept delaying elections. Like, it was just obvious that that like Haitians were right from the beginning. Like, they clearly knew what was going on. Sorry, I'm getting heated.
No, you're right. I mean, the frustrating thing is like I feel like people in the know, and again, that's something I usually try not to say about myself, but like people who have been watching this space are kind of like screaming at the top of their lungs, like, come on. And I think part of the reason why this discussion is really important is because it can't just be you, me, and five other people, right?
Yeah. I mean,
and so what should people pay attention to, and what should people look for as the situation progresses?
Well, there are a few things that I personally will be paying attention to. I'm going to be looking at who's on this transitional council. I'm looking at how the U.S. in particular, but other like CARICOM countries and the like so-called Council of Elders, which is like retired former leaders of Caribbean states, how they support this council. Like, what kind of, even stuff like are the stakeholders being like, is their internet being paid for? Are they able to meet physically all in one space? Like, what kind, like, really the most basic things, like, how are they being supported by outside actors? Because, like, this is not a perfect situation. It is the best that's happening right now. So, like, what are the most powerful people doing to say, like, we've got your back, we're going to protect you, we're going to protect this process? So that's one thing I want to know. The second thing I want to know is, how is this political process going to be married with a security process? Like, where do these things intersect? Like, how is the transitional council, or whoever they choose to be the interim leader, how is that person involved in conversations about this multinational security support mission? Like, what does that look like? Because Ariel Henry really gunned for it. He's really, really enthusiastic about it. I want to see, like, how Haitian people consider the legitimacy of this council, because rightly so, a lot of Haitian people are so skeptical of any foreign interference, especially when it comes to the United States. Like, you guys backed Henri. Look what happened. Like, why are you telling us what to do? So I want to see, like, are those people considering this transitional council to be something that's legitimate? I want, like, those are the main thoughts that I have right now. Like, I don't want this to fall out of our vision. It's hard to get good information just because when you, like, it's just difficult because it's dangerous to speak to the press, and it's dangerous for press to be there. So,
unless you're Barbeque, and then
you're Barbeque, and he's like, come on down, I mean, bring your cameras. But like, and people have bigger things to worry about than talking to me. Like, they gotta keep their families safe. They gotta feed their families. They gotta figure out, how to get from one place to another safely. Like, these are just the most basic things that we can't even imagine how difficult and how challenging it is. So those, like, I want to see how the West and how these big players prop up and support, like, who are they supporting and how are they supporting real Haitian people? Like, $33 million in aid is just like, sorry, that's not enough. Like, how are you
I want to see what France does here, if anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've been involved. In Canada, as well, has been, involved in conversations. But, like, you guys owe the Haitians money.
Yeah,
you owe the Haitians money. So, I mean, and I'm so curious about, like, what happens in the diaspora too, because, like, surely there are people who want to go home, who want to be able to go to Haiti, and, like, these are people who would be part of a young political class. They're young professionals, a lot of them. So, like, what happens in the diaspora to sort of shift Haiti's future too?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about getting, members of the diaspora back to serve a political class is, like, the place where a lot of those folks have gone to provide something that Haiti can't, which is physical security.
Yeah, and then, like, then the question is, like, is there a division between the diaspora and, like, people who have stayed? Like, it's very complicated. So I'm curious to see, like, what that dynamic looks like.
Yeah.
But most of all, I want to see big, powerful nations and institutions say, all right, let's go in on a Haitian response to this. Like, all we've tried to do hasn't worked. So let's, like, we need to listen to the people here. So what are we going to do about this? Do I think that will happen? Probably not.
Yeah, that would be the biggest change I think we've seen in a long time, right? To
Mm-hmm.
actually listening to indigenous
Well,
populations and kind of taking their sort of feedback into not just account, but giving it the lead.
well, yeah. So, I mean, like, it's not a one-to-one, but like you can look at these, you can see in Gaza, like, how the United States is like kind of incapable of being like, okay, we have to look at this holistically.
Yeah.
And we have to be
Well,
invested in a long term.
that's the thing, right? In many ways, we keep thinking in terms of the next 2 years and not in terms of the next 20, right?
Well,
I feel
and
like
I
that
think
happened in
that,
Afghanistan. We fought several 2-year wars, right? Back to
yeah,
back to back to back to back.
well, yeah, and we also surge and withdrawal, surge and
Yeah.
withdrawal. And then, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even talk about Afghanistan right now without wanting
Yeah.
to
No,
cry.
I'll yeet myself through a window.
Honestly, yeah. But, you know, we see this play out over and over and over again. And, you know, hopefully, I don't know, I still try to have hope about things, even though I sound like a total pessimist. I'm not, I swear. You know, hopefully there are smart people that are talking. You know, I know that there are smart people who are talking about this. There are smart people who are Haitian who are talking about this and who are like demanding better. And so, like, let's talk to them and listen to them.
Yeah, I think that's the way to end this, right? Is to say that, look, I mean, we're two folks, but there's others out there who, particularly Haitian voices, who will have more to say on this. So,
and so, like, talking to them is critical, and not
yeah,
just in like in a necropolitics sort of way. Not just talking about death and destruction, but talking about life and possibility, and seeing Haitian culture and society and politics is just like critical to our own well-being, right? Like,
yeah,
this to me, like, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Haiti, like, these people are important to me. Like, I want this, I want all of this effort to be made to support people, to support these people, and to, like, not even for our own national interests, like, throw that out the window. Like, these are human beings and they deserve to live in dignity.
Yeah. Well said. All right, and I guess let's pause our discussion there. And you know, I'm sure you'll have more on this in the future. The Noisecutter podcast is a production of Titan Gray, LLC, and is hosted by me, Rex Chatterjee. If you found our podcast helpful and want to say thanks, please head over to your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever else, and give us a review, leave a comment, and hit that follow or subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest. For more about our guest or this episode, head over to our website, noisecutterpodcast.com, where you'll find contact info for our guest as well as links to some of the things we talked about on this episode. If you want to reach us directly, just send an email to info@noisecutterpodcast.com. This recording is a copyright of Titan Gray, LLC, with all rights reserved. This podcast may be construed as attorney advertising, and prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, and your listening to this podcast or contacting us about it does not form an attorney-client relationship. No affiliation or relationship, including an attorney-client relationship, exists between us and our guests unless otherwise stated. For full terms of use, please visit our website at noisecutterpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time, here at Noisecutter.